Hello and welcome to The Essential Reads. My name is Isaac and my goal is to bring to you a bunch of classic audiobooks in an easy and accessible way. If you like the show and want to support me, you can do all the YouTubey things like subscribe or all of that, or the podcasty things like share it and leave a review. And if you want to support me in a more personal, meaningful way that will allow me to do this forever, hopefully, and bring you even more audiobooks, you can join the Patreon for as little as $1 a month, where you will also have access to exclusive audiobooks that will never be published here, either on YouTube or your respective podcasting platform. So if that sounds like your thing, go to the Patreon. The link is in the show notes or description box. Now, let's dive in. Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Chapter 39. In the morning, we went up to the village and bought a wire rat trap and fetched it down and unstopped the best rat hole. And in about an hour, we had 15 of the bulliest kind of ones. And then we took it and put it in a safe place under Aunt Sally's bed. But while we was gone for spiders, little Thomas Franklin, Benjamin Jefferson, Alexander Phelps found it there and opened the door to see if the rats would come out. And they did. And Aunt Sally, she come in. And when we got back, she was a-standing at the top of the bed, raising Cain. And the rats was doing what they could to keep off the dull times for her. So she took and dusted us both with the hickory, and we was as much as 2 hours catching another 15 or 16. Drat that meddlesome cub. And they weren't the likeliest, nother, 'cause the first haul was the pick of the flock. I never see a likelier lot of rats than what that first haul was. We got a splendid stock of stored spiders and bugs and frogs and caterpillars and one thing or another, and we liked to go get a hornet's nest, but we didn't. The family was home. We didn't give it right up, but stayed with them as long as we could, 'cause we allowed we'd tire them out, or they'd got to tire us out, and they'd done it. And then we got alley campaign, and rubbed on places, and was pretty near all right again, but couldn't sit down convenient. And then we went for the snakes, and grabbed a couple of dozen garters and house snakes, and put 'em in a bag, and put 'em in our room, and by that time, it was supper time, and a rattling good honest day's work. And hungry? Oh, no, I reckon not. And there weren't a blessed snake up there when we went back. We didn't half tie the sack, and they worked out, somehow, and left. But it didn't matter much, 'cause they was still on the premises somewhere. So we judged we could get some of 'em again. Nope, there weren't no real scarcity of snakes around the house for a considerable spell. You'd see 'em dripping from the rafters in places every now and then, and they generally landed on your plate, and down the back of your neck, and most of the time when you didn't want 'em. Well, they was handsome, and striped, and there weren't no harm in a million of 'em. But that never made no difference to Aunt Sally. She despised snakes, be the breed they might. She couldn't stand 'em no way you could fix it. And every time one of them flopped down on her, it didn't make no difference what she was doing. She would just lay that work down and light out. I never see such a woman, and you could hear her whoop to Jericho. You couldn't get her to take a hold of one with the tongs. And if she turned over and found one in bed, she would scramble out and lift a howl that you would think the house was afire. She disturbed the old man so that he said he could most wish there hadn't ever been no snakes created. Why, after every last snake had been gone clear out of the house for as much as a week, Aunt Sally weren't over it yet. She weren't near over it. And when she was sitting and thinking about something, you could touch her on the back of her neck with a feather, and she would jump right out of her stockings. It was very curious. But Tom said all women was just so. He said they was made that way, for some reason or another. We got a licking every time one of our snakes come her way, and she allowed these lickings weren't nothing to what she would do if we ever loaded up the place again with 'em. I didn't mind the lickings, 'cause they didn't amount to nothing, but I minded the trouble we had to lay in another lot. But we got them laid in, and all the other things, and you'd never see a cabin so blithesome as Jim's when they'd all swarm out for the music and go for him. Jim didn't like the spiders, and the spiders didn't like Jim, so they'd lay for him and make it mighty warm for him. And he said that between the rats and the snakes and the grindstone, there weren't no room in the bed for him, scarcely. And when there was, a body couldn't sleep, it was so lively. And it was always lively, he said, 'cause they never slept all at one time, but took a turn about. So when the snakes was asleep, the rats was on deck. And when the rats turned in, the snakes come on watch. So he always had one gang under him, in his way, and t'other gang having a circus over him. And if he got up to hunt a new place, the spiders would take a chance at him if he crossed over. He said if he ever got out, This time, he wouldn't ever be a prisoner again, not for a salary. Well, by the end of 3 weeks, everything was in pretty good shape. The shirt was sending early in a pie, and every time a rat bit Jim, he would get up and write a little in his journal whilst the ink was fresh. The pens was made, the inscriptions and so on was carved on the grindstone. The bed leg was sawed in two, and we'd ate up the sawdust, and it give us the most amazing stomachache. We reckoned we was going to die, but didn't. It was the most indigestible sawdust I ever see, and Tom said the same. But as I was saying, we got all the work done now, at last, and we was pretty much fagged out, too, mainly Jim. The old man had wrote a couple times to the plantation below Orleans to come get their runaway, but hadn't got no answer because there weren't no such plantation, so he allowed he would advertise Jim in the St. Louis or New Orleans papers, and when he mentioned the St. Louis ones, it gave me a cold shiver, and I see we hadn't no time to lose. So Tom said, now for the anonymous letters. What's them? I says. Warnings to the people that something's up. Sometimes it's done one way, sometimes another, but there's always somebody spying around that gives notice to the governors of the castle. When Louis XVI was going to light out our Tuileries, a servant girl done it. It's a very good way, and so it's the anonymous letters. We'll use them both. And it's usual for the prisoner's mother to change clothes with him, and she stays in and he slides out. We'll do that, too. But looky here, Tom. What do we want to warn anybody for that something's up? Let them find it out for themselves. It's their lookout. Yes, I know, but you can't depend on them. It's the way they've acted from the very start. Left us do everything. So confining and mullet-headed. They don't take no notice of nothing at all. So if we don't give them notice, there won't be nobody for nothing to interfere with us. And so, after all our hard work and trouble, this escape will go off perfectly flat. Won't amount to nothing. Won't be nothing to it. Well, as for me, Tom, that's the way I'd like. Shucks, he says, and looks disgusted. So I says, but I ain't gonna make no complaint. Any way that suits you suits me. What are you gonna do about the servant girl? You'll be her. You slide in the middle of the night, and hook that yellow girl's frock. Why, Tom, that'll make trouble the next morning, 'cause of course she probably ain't got any but that one. I know, but you don't want it but 15 minutes to carry the anonymous letter and shove it under the front door. All right, then, I'll do it. But I could carry it just as handy in my own togs. You wouldn't look like a servant girl then, would you? No, but let me nobody see what I look like anyways. That ain't got nothing to do with it. The thing for us to do is just to do our duty, and not talk about whether anybody would see us do it or not. Ain't you got no principle at all? All right, I ain't saying nothing. I'm the servant girl. Who's Jim's mother? I'm his mother. I hook a gown from Aunt Sally. Well then, you'll have to stay in the cabin when me and Jim leaves. Not much. I'll stuff Jim's clothes full of straw and lay it on his bed to represent his mother in disguise. And Jim'll take the woman's gown off me and wear it. And we'll all evade together. When a prisoner of style escapes, it's called an evasion. It's always called so when a king escapes, for instance. And the same thing when a king's son. It don't make no difference whether he's a natural one or an unnatural one. So Tom, he wrote the anonymous letter, and I smooched the yellow wench's frock that night and put it on and shoved it under the front door the way Tom told me to do. It said, "Beware. Trouble is brewing. Keep a sharp lookout. Unknown friend." Next night, we stuck a picture, which Tom drawn in blood, of a skull and crossbones on the front door, and the next night, another one of a coffin on the back door. I never see a family in such a sweat. They couldn't have been a worse scared if the place had been a full of ghosts, laying for 'em, behind everything, under the beds, and shivering through the air. If a door banged, Aunt Sally, she jumped and said, "Ouch!" If anything fell, she jumped and said, "Ouch!" If you happened to touch her when she weren't noticing, she done the same. She wouldn't face no way and be satisfied, because she allowed there was something behind her every time. So she was always whirling around sudden and saying, "Ouch!" And before she'd get 2/3 round, she'd whirl back again and say it again. She was afraid to go to bed, but she dain't sit up. So the thing was working very well, Tom said. He said he never see a thing more satisfactory. He said it showed it was done right, So, he said, now for the grand bulge. So, the very next morning, at the streak of dawn, we got another letter ready. I was wondering what we better do with it, because we heard them say at supper they was going to have a nigger on watch at both doors at night. Tom, he went down the lightning rod to spy around, and then the back door was asleep, and he stuck it in the back of his neck and come back. This letter said, "Don't betray me. I wish to be your friend. There's a desperate gang of cutthroats from over the Indian territory trying to steal your runaway nigger tonight, and they have been trying to scare you so as you will stay in the house and not bother them. I am one of the gang. But I've got religion, and I wish to quit and lead an honest life again, and will betray the hellish design. They will sneak down from northwards along the fence at midnight exact with a false key and go in the nigger's cabin to get him. I am to be off a piece and blow a tin horn if I see any danger, but instead of that, I'll bawl like a sheep as soon as they get in, and will not blow at all. Whilst they are getting the chains loose, you slip in there and lock 'em in, and can kill 'em at your leisure. If you do, they'll suspicion something and raise whoop jamboree ho. I do not wish any reward, but to know I've done the right thing. Unknown friend."
Thank you so very much for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, share, all that jazz, and if you really enjoyed, do subscribe because there is more to come. And if you're listening on podcast, please leave a review. It is the easiest way to get this in front of as many people as possible, and reading your views really makes my day. And if you want to support the show in an even larger way, you can go to the Patreon for as little as $1 a month, where you'll have exclusive audiobooks. Once again, thank you very much for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.